I would love that. December, I'll be there.
You're going to visit us in December? Excellent. I can't wait to meet you in person. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Okay. I know, a bunch of you are far away.
Yeah.
Some of you are closer. Let's see, Kafira in Toronto. Shabbat Shalom.
Well, I'm a hour and 40 minutes from LaGuardia.
Oh, okay. All right.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Does someone know how to get rid of that? Yeah.
You just click on it. Oh, cool.
So go. You just have to, okay, I'll do it. Hold on one second. Viva has it?
I think I do.
Hey.
Good morning.
Hi. How are you? Great to see you, buddy. Okay, we're gonna get started. Hi, Paul. Great to see you.
Fix your glasses. I found
Okay.
my first train one.
Okay.
Excellent.
We are starting. Tony, do you want to say the bracha?
Okay,
Okay. Harley?
sure.
Okay. Here you go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'tzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Blessed are you, source of the universe, who has revealed your Torah to us and commanded us to soak in your ancient wisdom. Amen. Okay, here we go. So the parsha is Nitzavim, one of my favorite parshas. That was a mistake. Sorry, I unmuted myself. My apologies. Especially in good morning, Shabbat Shalom, Roberta, Leslie, great to see you. Especially insofar as Devarim goes, is Deuteronomy, which can be a harsh book, and there are passages in this parsha as well that are harsh, and there are other sections that are just, to me, just luminous and mind-blowing. So let's see how that goes. Good morning, Jessica. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. There we go. So hopefully you'll see why I called it Standing Today, all of you before God in a minute, and timelessness, and the elements of tshuva over the course of our time together. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to give you a little backdrop to Nitzavim from the previous parsha. We're just going to read a few verses, and what I want us to pay attention to is what's going on here with time, right? Who's being addressed, and what are they being told, and what does that say about time? I'll read you a few verses, and then we'll ask that question, okay? So, okay, okay. Do you have a good view of the source sheet? Yeah, it's okay? Okay, great. Vayikra Moshe el kol Yisrael vayomer alehem. Atem re'item et kol asher asa Adonai le'einechem be'eretz Mitzrayim le'paro l'chol avadav l'chol artso. So Moshe called all of Israel, right? Kol Yisrael, and said, you have seen all that Adonai did before. Your very eyes in the land of Egypt took Pharaoh into all his courtiers and to his whole country. So you, right, Atem, like very strong throughout. And then this thought continues, Hamasot, Havdalot, Asher Ra'u Einecha, Ha'otim, Havdolim. So the wondrous feats, the great feats that your eyes saw, Ha'otot, the signs, Hamoftim, the marvels, the great marvels, those great marvels. Okay, so let's stop and ask for a moment, just a quick moment. Is this true? Did they see these things before their eyes? Did their eyes see it? What's going on here? So remember, I'm asking you a question about time and how these people are addressed. Okay. Harley, do you want to say something? Big smile.
No, I was saying no.
No, they didn't see it.
Right.
Who saw it?
People who died before them.
People who died before them.
Yeah, sure. And
Well, that's one person in the crowd.
and action
Okay.
too.
The whole community did not see these things that Moshe said, your eyes saw. He's very explicitly saying, your eyes saw. Moshe's eyes saw. They did not see. Richard, what do you want to say? No? You got it? I said, when you want to say,
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, this is in the 39th year before entering the promised land. So everybody was dead except for these folks, almost.
except for Moshe, Joshua, Nachshon, and Sarah.
Right.
Sarah. Okay, so what is Moshe doing here? So let's think about that. I'm going to call on Asher, and I'm going to read more. Asher Chaim, read more, and then I want you to think about, like, what is Moshe doing here? And in terms of, like, grounding us on time, I believe this is the third of the 3 speeches in the Straits of Moab before the people enter Israel, and it's, the rabbis say, the day of Moshe's death. Okay, Asher Chaim.
There were 59-year-olds who had seen this. There were people who were under 20 and were not condemned to die in the wilderness. And Moshe looks out, and there are some people who experienced this in their very early childhood.
Wait, so how do you know? How do you know? Help us understand what you're seeing.
I'll have to look for the source.
Is the source in the Torah or in the Midrash? That's what I want to know.
Oh, it's not an explicit verse.
Okay, all right.
But the question of who was responsible for the sin of the spies and therefore sentenced to death.
No, but it says elsewhere that the whole generation died out. So we can presume, since they're about to enter the land of Israel, that they died already.
There's also a wild midrash that the women were not sentenced to death, and that so Miriam was the only woman who died in the wilderness, and Moshe is addressing the women to connect with the men.
All right, let's go for now with the basic shot, the basic understanding of what's going on here. Okay, and yeah, Jeffrey.
Is this where the idea on Pesach comes from, where it says you should tell the story as if you were there because you were there?
So Jeffrey is going where I'm going to. But Jeffrey is saying, like, what's going on here? You, even though you weren't there, you're obligated to see yourself as if you personally have left Egypt and God redeemed you. So all this rhetoric this is one of the sources of it. I think the whole Torah is the source of it. Like, we are told this story in the third person, right, in the book of Exodus. But here, it's a you story. You went through this explicitly and specifically, or at least that's the claim. Okay, Roberta, last comment, and I'm going to go on.
Yeah, I love the question, because what came to me is he's creating community. And it reminded me, I used to live with Vietnamese monks and nuns, and before they get their hair cut, they go and ask the ancestors for permission to cut their hair. And the sense of community horizontally and vertically, like, you know, pretending time can be measured that way, is built that way. And that you're entering into this promised land. Moses, am not going to be here. Exactly. So you have each other. Okay. You have, it's you. And so it's a beautiful community building thing that we need. Yeah. We need that today. Talk about a lesson from Torah we need today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're also saying where I want to go, which is, so there's this intense sense of horizontality. That's not a word. Of the horizontal nature of time here, right? Intense and also vertical, right? We're connected to our ancestors. You know, I've been hearing there's this new thing called long-termism, long futurism, you know, but it's not new. It's not new, right? This is it, right? This is it. A sense of what came and what's coming. Okay, so let's go on. I'm going to go on, and then I'll call more people.
There is a biblical verse, by the way, for age 20 and more.
Okay, as my father used to say, don't confuse me with the facts. Drop it into the chat. I shall try it. So maybe this is the point is more subtle than I made, but I still think the basic point stands, which is Moshe's addressing a generation, mostly, for the most part, who did not leave Egypt, and saying, you saw this, sort of almost demanding or insisting that they internalize a story that may not have happened to them. Okay, but you know, in a good class, right? the agenda of the teacher sort of becomes more nuanced, and that's what's happening. Although it's like sort of a little bit
It
of
says with your own eyes, like, it doesn't just say you, it says
Yes.
with your own eyes.
Yeah. Okay, Ellie, you're dying to say something.
I don't know if I'm dying to say something.
You're dying to say something.
No,
You really want to say something.
I'd like to say something.
He's living to say something.
You know what this reminds me of is, when you say the Amidah,
Yeah,
we take 3 steps backwards.
yeah, the standing prayer, take 3 steps backwards.
To our,
Yeah.
with our ancestors, and then 3 steps forward, with those who are
Oh, beautiful.
coming or
Beautiful.
come,
Beautiful.
that connection,
Yeah.
both ways.
Yeah, so our prayer, our liturgy is certainly full of ancestors and descendants.
Right.
Beautiful. Okay, so now, I'm on verse 3 in chapter 29, and we're not even at the parsha yet. You know what, actually, I'm gonna skip this because I think it's not absolutely necessary. I'm gonna go to Nitzavim, okay? So we're in verse 9 now. So now look at this. So this is what Roberta was saying. Look at this, sense of community that's being created here. Atem Nitzavim Hayom. You are standing here this day. And between verse 9 and verse 14, Hayom, today, is written 5 times, right? Unbelievable. So it's the light word, whatever that's called. It's the repeated phrase that is one of the keys to understanding this passage, right? Atem Nitzavim Hayom. So you are standing here this day, all of you, Lifnei Adonai Elohechem, before God, your God, right? Okay, so who's standing here? Rashechem, your heads, Shivtechem, your tribes, Siknechem, your elders, V'shotrechem, your judges, Kol Ish Yisrael, everybody. Okay, so then it goes on to continue to specify, and it's interesting because in verse 9 are like the leaders and the people who are powerful and visible and official. Then we go, your children, your wives, your stranger, Tavchem, Nishechem, B'gercha, Asher B'kerev Machanecha, who are in the midst of your camp. Mechotev Eitzecha Ad Shoev Meimecha. So from wood chopper to water drawer. So let's think about this for a minute. So first of all, and my chavruta this morning, I don't know if she's here, Rabbi Sharon Konanisfeld was saying, as we were studying this, that it's like, there's so much here about belonging. Right? First, it's you standing here before God, right? But it's you're this. And Rabbi Ingber and I don't know if he's here now, were studying a little bit yesterday, and there was one commentator, I forget who, said like, this is all designed to have Israel feel responsible for one another. Right? Kol Israel all of Israel is responsible for one another. So there's a sense of belong, like this is all yours, right? And it's not, first when I was reading this, I was actually studying with Anna Darda a couple of days ago. And I said, your children, your wives belonging to Kol Israel, but no, the whole thing is possessive. Right? The whole thing is yours, right? The Gercha Asher B'kerev Machanecha, and the stranger, right? Now, so here's the thing about wood chopper to water drawer. It's possibly something called, I think, a merism, which is like you indicate something specific, but it indicates the whole, right? From A to Z, right? The whole, right? So from water drawer or from wood chopper to water drawer. Now, there are 2 ways to read this. And again, Anna and I were studying this and discussing this the other day, but is the wood chopper and the water drawer just defining the stranger? Or is it sort of talking about everybody is Israel from this to that? And some of the commentaries say, wood choppers had a lot of status. I have no idea why. And water drawers didn't. Actually, we'll see that in a second. Meshilach says that. So it's a way to indicate everybody of any status. It doesn't make sense. It should say from your heads to your water drawers and from your judges, right? So I'm not exactly sure what's doing this.
It's elemental fire to water.
Nice.
Think of it that way.
Nice. So it's wood to water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's covering all the elements. So that's beautiful. Yeah. So and it makes it very concrete and kind of tangible in a way that these other categories didn't. So I like that. Okay. So let's go on. 11. What?
One other thing.
Yeah, Jen.
There's this Buddhist saying about chop wood, carry water. And I never thought about that before here, but there's some
right.
parallel there.
But what's the whole saying?
The saying is just that it's about being present, and it's about whether you're chopping your wood or you're carrying your water, you should be doing that and not doing 20 other things while you're doing those things.
Beautiful.
It's also, you can't force enlightenment, you just have to put 125 effort.
Yeah, right. So, and there's so much here about, I'm going to get through the rest of the passage and then I'll call on people. But there's so much here, as I just said, about hayom, about presence. And I think this is true. This sort of adds to the sense of presence. But I will also say that presence here is complicated. You know how people say all you have is the present? No. Like in the present is the past and the future. It's not only about this moment. It's not a mindless moment. It's a mindful moment.
Very true.
Tony likes that. Okay, good. Tony and I had the same religion professor in college.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Of course.
Oh, I actually didn't have him, but I read him subsequently.
No, we didn't have the same. Okay.
I'm a big fan of his.
Let me roll that back. Tony's a big fan of Professor William, but I'm a big fan.
Yes.
Unfortunately died.
Did he?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to roll that back. Okay.
It's essentially true. It's
essentially true. I had a whole scenario in my mind that wasn't true. Good job.
In a midrash.
He did tell me Buber had a big influence on.
All right, so where am I? Yud Aleph, 11? Yes. So to enter into the covenant of your God Adonai, which your God Adonai is concluding with you this day. Wait, what's Allah to Ashrahayim? Is that translated here?
Allah is a curse or imprecation.
But I thought, so where is that?
In the Hebrew.
Yeah, I know in Hebrew. Okay, thank you. Thank you for helping with that. So, so to cross over in the covenant of Adonai, your God, and in the curse. Ooh, what's that doing there? I don't know. Asher Adonai.
With its sanctions. They translate Allah as sanction rather than curse.
At the end of the sentence, thank you. Asher Adonai Elohecha karet imcha hayom, which your God Adonai is not karet, is not concluding, but it's more like cutting. It's a brit was said to be
Cutting a deal.
Cutting a deal. Thank you. Nice. Karet imcha hayom. So cutting a deal with you today. Why? L'ma'an hakim otcha hayom lo la'am, v'hu yelecha le'Elohim, kasher diber lach, v'kasher nishba le'otecha Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So 12, in order to establish you this day as God's people, this day, and in order to be your God as promised you and as sworn to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Okay. So the lo itchem levadchem, and I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, right? Lo itchem levadchem, anochi karet et habrit hazot et ha'ala hazot. Okay, I think I kind of translated all that. Ki et. Okay, now here's this is an amazing verse. Ki et asher yeshno po imanu omed hayom l'fnei Adonai Eloheinu. But both of those who are standing here with us this day before God Adonai, and with those who are not with us here this day. So this is astonishing, right? So what's happening today, there's this consciousness, there's this hyper-awareness that this is not just about you in front of us, right, in front of me, but it's about us now who's reading this text, right? There's this awareness of the descendants of the generations. There's an awareness of us, of who we are reading this. And every time we read this, we feel addressed, I think, by Hayom, by today, by you. Right? Who are we all standing with today? Today. Okay. Okay, I think that we can skip the rest of it. Yes.
Sorry, just it's not often that I bring my mother's Church of England to this table, so forgive me for that. But
one of the central hymns in that Protestant tradition is "Stand Before Your God," which comes from Book of Psalms, chapter 23, and it says, "Who will stand before the King?" And then the next line is, "I will cleanse my hands." And so this going back to the wood chopper and the water drawer, because they're the fetishes of wood, right? So it's the wood chopper who's going to get rid of those despicable fetishes of wood, and only with the water drawer can you cleanse the hands.
Ooh, beautiful.
So with the cleansing and before the King,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's a little Protestant to this table.
No, it's a psalm. It's also a Jewish text, right? Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share. A lot of people want to speak. And then I'm gonna go into more deeply Hayom. I'm only calling out people who haven't spoken before. I'm really sorry, Roberta. Okay, Amy and then Talia. But Roberta, feel free to put your comment in the chat.
I want to make three super short comments. First of all, I thought the wood gatherers and the water drawers were the men and women, because men would chop wood and women would, carry water. But Onkelos tells us through Rashi that the wood gatherers and the water drawers were Canaanites who came to Moses to convert, but Moses instead allowed them to join with them as hewers and fillers. In other words, they weren't fully joined, because I don't guess he didn't trust those Canaanites. Now, to support Yashar Chaim, the reference to in the land of Egypt, these were the Israelites who were young enough to see Egyptian idolatrous abominations, but were not old enough, i.e. they were under 20 years of age, to be included in God's decree that those who left Egypt would die in the wilderness because of their involvement in the episode with the spies. So that's from Ibn Ezra and Cheskuni. So there, I'm supporting Yashar Chaim. And just super quick, the third point, if you own a vehicle, fill it up with gas as soon as possible, because when this hurricane hits, gas will become short again.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And yeah, so your first comment, what was the source of your first comment?
That the wood gatherers and the water bearers were the Canaanites.
The source.
Onkelos.
Was it Onkelos? Okay, yeah.
Rashi.
So yeah, Rashi. Okay, right.
Via Onkelos.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Via Uncle Lewis.
Okay, thank you. So that's going along with the woodcutters and the water drawers defining the strangers amongst you, not the whole community. Absolutely. All right. So, Jessica, did you have your hand up before? Did you want to say something?
Just briefly, for me, my memory of the chop wood, carry water is that it was, from what I learned, in my Buddhist studies, it was before enlightenment, I chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, I chop wood and carry water. So that enlightenment is only a continuation of still needing to address the phenomenal world and the things that we do every day, and chopping wood and carrying water is like prayer. So when I was a Buddhist student, we did work practice, and sometimes that meant going out in the streets of New York and picking up garbage with that intention of chopping wood and carrying water, do what needs to be done. So I feel like that's something that I just wanted to add.
Beautiful, Jessica. And it reminds me also that, right after the scene of Har Sinai, right after that parsha, which is Yitro, the next parsha is Mishpatim, and includes things like, okay, when your ox, gores somebody, then what are you going to do? Right. So after Sinai comes the details. It comes the human and animal relationships. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Tali Ann, Rachel, and then I'm going to go, and then Wendy, and go back to the text. Okay.
Yes. I was just thinking about the concept of yichus, the fact that we're standing here and that we're all part of this, of the lineage some people say that, oh, certain people have a lineage, but I feel like the first time this is really saying we all have yichus because we're all, which I never really thought about it. So, I mean, that's what I'm projecting. I don't know if that's anybody else see it that way, but that's what I just thought that was just such a beautiful thing. And that's really forming in terms of where's our identity come from. It comes, saying we're standing here. And we are, and there's no past, future, present. It's, we're here, we're all here.
Beautiful. No, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Like, we're all standing today. Wow. We all are standing in that lineage. And there's this joke. Actually, I think it's become like an app or a website or something. Like, I saw you at Sinai. So there's a midrash that we were all standing at Sinai. Not only did we all leave Egypt, as Jeff was saying.
I met from Sinai, right.
But we were all standing at Sinai. So, you look familiar. I think I saw you. I must have seen you at Sinai. Right. It's like a pickup line. It's really cute. All right.
And I just want to add, because and then also directing it, it's been in my thoughts when this is going back 3 weeks, but I've been carrying it. When someone used the word, the challenge, I think when you and Rabbi Ingberg were there about the word race, and what I really, and then this confirms it, it's not so much race, I prefer the word talking about peoplehood. That, because race gets to be very, challenge, confrontational, but I really feel that I wish that people, instead of getting torn by that, particularism and universalism, which is totally Judaism, but it's that we're peoplehood. And I wish we would focus on that more.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Rachel.
I remember studying this word, metonymy, in literature. It's a use of the name of one thing for that of another, to which it has some logical relation, as scepter for sovereignty or bottle for strong drink. So they may not be talking about certain people who are chopping wood or drawing water in the desert. Maybe that's the answer. It's just an expression to refer to something else. And
symbolic. It's either a merism, which means that it's a way to refer to the whole, or a metonymy, which is a piece of something, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know about merism. That's fascinating. And you say metonymy. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to go back and sort of get to the point of Hayom. Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
I see the connection between water carrier and wood chopper. It's limited to only earthly things, and it doesn't. And I see it more as Bashamayim va'aretz.
Heavens and the earth.
Heaven and earth.
Right. Actually, Anna, I think, said that the other day when we were studying, is that the tops of the trees.
Bashamayim, because Bashamayim is the water, and the wood is the land.
Yeah.
So I see it more because if you translate the Peshat, it's literally limiting to only earthly things, and I see it more as heaven and earth.
Beautiful. As symbolic of heaven and earth. I love that. Thank you. So, yesterday I found this great piece in Torah.com, which is a wonderful website. All kinds of scholars writing about the Parsha and other things, the portion of the week and other things. And I found one by Everett Fox, who's a wonderful translation of the 5 books of Moses and also the books of Samuel. And he interprets Hayom in beautiful ways. And so let's see what he has to say. He says, in other words, the experience of hearing the repeated todays in Nitzavim, in essence, transforms the text's later audiences into Moses's addressees, which is exactly what we were saying, right? It's like we are the addressee. I am suggesting that it is difficult to be present at the reciting of these words without feeling somehow addressed. And then he said, we're going to get to the footnote. I left it there for a reason. You'll see in a minute. In a small way, then, these kinds of scenes are reenacted whenever the Torah is read aloud. Today, in Nitzavim, challenges all hearers of the text to make the moment their own. The book of Deuteronomy, the great example of the teaching Torah made new. Thus begins the Jewish process, as old as the Bible itself, of rehearing and rethinking the tradition. Okay, so now let's look at his footnote. A similar effect in a more modern setting might be heard in the Gettysburg Address, where Lincoln's repetition of the word here echoes for later audiences well beyond the confines of the battlefield. So I thought it was worth hearing that, and if Richard's here, I'm going to ask him to read it. So I think there are 5 extant versions of the Gettysburg Address, and this is one of them. Richard?
Yeah. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We should all be listening. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot concentrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or to detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. It's easy to understand why this is the greatest orations in the history of the United States.
And it's so short, right? I love that. But, I'm hearing it now as if it's addressed to us now in our specific situation.
For sure.
So I don't know, and you can see the rhetoric, right? Moshe's powerful rhetoric, Hayom, 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 and Abraham Lincoln's here, 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 and we the living. They both have, we'll see in Deuteronomy, there's an emphasis also on we the living.
Thank you for asking me to read that. I appreciate it.
As soon as I made the connection, your name was all over it.
I'm here.
Hunani. All right. I can go back and share my screens. Or a few other things about this. Okay, so now, there's a few things about, let's read one more thing about Hayom from Dr. Rachel Anasfeld, who's actually my friend Richard Sharon Anasfeld's sister-in-law. Who would like to read that? Anyone want to read this? My voice is getting all tired. Jeffrey. This is number 4. Thank you.
There is one other element which is significant in the understanding of Hayom, God. The Torah doesn't just say we are standing still today. It says we are standing still before God. It is God who grants us this escape from the human framework of horizontal time, this peek into the divine vertical vision of a present, past, and future. Name is written but not pronounced. It's too sacred and secret to be pronounced. Actually, it contains within it the word for being in the past, present, and future. That's God's essence. Unlike each of us, he was, is, and will be. What we are doing when we stand still for that moment of vertical eternal time is existing in the divine realm. As we say at the end of Musaf and Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Ta'atzmeinu. Today may you strengthen us. Hayom Tabarkenu. Today may you bless us. Today may you strengthen us and bless us with a full experience of Hayom. Hayom, today.
Hayom.
Hayom.
What a beautiful connection.
Today, feeling vertical time.
What a beautiful connection between today and Rosh Hashanah, which is Hayom. In fact, the rabbis called it Yom Achrita, the long day, right? It's not just one day, but it's 2 days and it's a long day.
May I add 20 seconds of reading to that? It's a text I thought was in here.
Yeah.
A couple of lines. People know Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, Walt Whitman. He says, "It avails not time nor place. Distance avails not. I am with you, you men and women of a generation or ever so many generations hence, just as you feel when you look on the river and the sky, so I felt. Just as any of you is one of a living crowd, I was one of a cloud. Just as you are refreshed by the gladness of the river, I was refreshed. Just as you stand, yet hurry with the current, I stood, yet was hurried. Just as you looked on the numberless ships and the thick-set pipes of steamboats, I too looked."
Wow. Thank you. And this all points to, like, here we are, we talked last week, Ezehu Ashir Hasamech B'chalko, who is wealthy, the one who's happy with their portion, because we were all so partial. And yet here we're telling, the Torah is telling us we stand as individuals, and yet we have access to all time. We have access to the past. We have access to the future. Just in this moment, we can find the past and the future, and we can find all of humanity in each one of us. Right? Which is what you're saying from what woman is saying. Right.
Somewhere in the Talmud, as I understand it, there's somebody who goes to the Messiah in Jerusalem and says, "When will you come?" and asks, "When will you come?" and the answer is today. And he goes back to his rabbi, and the rabbi says, until we understand what today means.
Oh. That part I don't remember. The part that I remember,
until we appreciate what today means, we cannot hear today when you hear my voice. So it's a grounding of all the teachings that
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So what I remember, and maybe someone could clarify in the chat, what I remember is like it's the same thing until we're ready for the Messiah. The Messiah's not going to come. But you're putting a fine point on that love until we really understand what today is.
Until we hear his voice today. Maybe it's not understanding. Maybe it's simply until we hear his voice today.
Asha Chaim put in the chat. Today, if you will listen to my voice.
Right.
Yeah. And Devorah Siegel said, and this is true, spiral time is Torah time. Like, every Pesach, we revisit the past, and yet the past time goes forward. It's very interesting what happens with time. Okay, so now I see Anna.
All right. Yes. I was going to say that, like what we had talked about earlier this week, I wanted to bring in, especially because you mentioned the Gettysburg Address, or you bring in the Gettysburg Address. When earlier this week when we had studied, I'd basically been like captivated by the idea that this is the crafting of a national narrative. Like what Moses is actually saying is like, all right, so this is our story. All of you are together in it. This is how it went. And that like from that, then they can like go out and create their like nationhood, that this is like the crafting of their national narrative. And I think that like as we and also interesting that Moses is like, you do this rather than we did this or we were there when he was, present for it. But I think that what the collapsing of time does is mean that you have this like national narrative that is sort of like a kernel that can like, the idea would be that it like remains resistant because there's a lot of futility in a national narrative for that reason, that you have a story that can like stand over time.
I missed what you're saying about futility. What are you saying about futility?
Utility.
Utility.
Utility. I'm like futility. Okay, got it.
But that, yeah, that by collapsing time, you make a narrative that is that feels permanent, that persists.
Yeah, and it occurs to me, like I'm thinking while you're talking, like sometimes a unified narrative does a lot of violence. In other words, a story, and someone gets up like, wasn't my story. Like, what are you talking? This is not my experience. You know, it's like if I say, "Oh, America's a place of privilege." I didn't feel that. I didn't experience that privilege. I don't know what you're talking about, right? Yeah. So you create a unified narrative. It could do violence, and maybe this does. I don't know, but there's something about what starts here and what Deuteronomy does. What Dr. Rachel Anaspo so beautifully articulated, that this is really. Like, this is the beginning of the retelling. Like, every generation, Judaism is invited into that conversation until, like, we're all part of the conversation. Until we're all part of the conversation, then maybe that unified narrative does do violence.
And I think anything unified can do violence or can be something good. I just think it's like a balance, but also that, like, and it's okay to have a national narrative. Like I say, like I think we think of national narrative as part and parcel with nationalism, but it doesn't. Everyone is constantly telling the story of themselves and the story of us and the story of we, and so like that is just like a natural part of the human condition. So it's not the storytelling that is the problem.
If we didn't have any kind of collective story, we'd sort of devolve into solipsism, right? We'd be very alone. We'd be more alone than we are. That would be very sad. But here, it's like we're invited into so many different points of connection, right? Before God, connected to the past, connected to the future, right? Connected to Moshe. Okay, Nehemiah. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom and almost Chag Sameach. On a personal note, I was there in Sinai. Maybe in another lifetime, I don't remember this one, I remember others. But in this lifetime, I climbed to the mountain and my initiation happened in Sinai near the Red Sea, when a couple of devotees sent me energies that came through them from a master from another nation, from India. Changed my life completely. Now, the wisdom that I got from this experience of 40 years or whatever is very simple. Ayom, today. The Messiah, the Jewish Messiah will come one day. The Christian Messiah came and will come back. The Muslim also will come. All this illusion for people who are not ready to see that the Messiah is here inside us all the time, waiting for us. That's a transfusion, waiting for us. And as the Lubavitch say, there's every generation a Messiah of his time is the master, the tzaddik. He can take us to the Messiah inside us because it's not just for the tzaddik it's all for each one of us. Another last personal note.
I'm gonna move on. I want to say something in response. I'm gonna move on.
There's a very important personal note that everybody needs to know.
Could you put it in the chat, please?
No, I need to give it and you'll understand why. It will take 1 second. I was supposed to be already on my way to Israel to be with my brother who has brain cancer, but it was postponed maybe for next week. Therefore, Jeff Khanna didn't respond because I'm so busy trying to get the passport. And all those who send prayers, and will send prayer to my brother Amishai, gift for our nation, that's who he is, even though he doesn't believe in God, he's fully living God in kibbutz near the desert. Is spiritually opened through this healing, and is also, even though he doesn't believe in God, he experienced God and love, open to his emotion, and the cancer seemed to be stopping. We don't know yet. And that will be total miracle because it usually doesn't happen in brain cancer, but I'm not sure, so I don't say it yet. We'll find out.
I love that you invited us all into prayer for him. Thank you.
Anybody want to pray? We do it every day. Anytime
Yeah, move on. I'm moving on. You can put the information in the chat, please. Thank you. So the idea of the Messiah connected to what Nehemiah is saying is that I like is that there's a sense that the Messiah is always coming. So it's sort of a force that we can tap into. It's always available there.
We have to come to him.
Nehemiah, I'm going to mute you in a minute. I'm going to invite Anna to mute you. Rhoda, I hope I said that very nicely.
You did.
Oh, good.
Shabbat Shalom and prayers for your brother Nehemiah. Well, I have felt sense of complete belonging in sanctuaries and in groups. I felt joy and bliss, and yet there was always something more I didn't feel. But I'm so happy we're discussing this, and maybe this resonates with others. I felt complete belonging and unification when I was at the wall, Hakotel, which, I visited many times, not for the last few years, but that was it. That was it.
Thank
with
you.
Others, everything.
Thank you, Rhoda. Beautiful to hear your voice. Okay, Helio.
Hello, Shana Tova. Hello.
Tova.
Shana Tova. I wanted to ask, how can you connect, of course, Hayom with a Makom? Of course, when you speak of time, we are speaking of space too. How can you connect to the parasha of Torah?
It's interesting because that's what Lincoln did. He emphasized here, right? So I guess if you understand Hamakom as the rabbis did, as the place of God or another name of God, then this is very much connected. But I don't hear Moshe, unless I'm missing something, there's not a lot about place. There's a lot about the place we're going into, but not the place that they're standing. There's the moment that they're standing and whom they're standing before. Okay,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm gonna go back here. I don't call them people's second, I'm sorry. Okay, so a couple of things. So Rashi says that this is that Aten Mitzavim teaches us so that Moshe gathered them together before God, B'yom Moto, the day of his death, to bring them again into the covenant. Right. So this is a this is a day. This is certainly a day for Moshe. And I just want to name, I don't know about you and the day, but it's hard to really understand the importance of every day connected to what Tony was saying, the magnitude, the power, right, of a day. And someone's like, okay, I just don't want to feel the same. I just want to watch TV for a few. I want to escape from the power of the day. And yet there's something in the power of the day. And that's what this is saying. Can we really stand here with one another before God, right? In advance of Rosh Hashanah or on, as someone was saying, the day of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so.
I think you just killed TV watching.
Not for me. Sorry. Look, we're only human. How much of this can we tolerate? Right? How much of this can we tolerate? So we tolerate a little bit more and a little bit more, hopefully we expand our capacity. But it can't be all, at least my experience. I don't know all intensity all the time. Okay, so all right, we're gonna go on. 2. Okay, I love this line from, I actually wrote this into our teaching last year, from Adorno, to you reading this 1,000 years from now, to your spirit. Can you imagine writing with that consciousness? Wow. But one could feel that in what Moshe is saying, right? And then two other verses in Deuteronomy, which sort of expand and echo what's in this parsha. Loet avotenu karet Adonai et habrit hazot ki itanu anachna ele po hayom. Kulanu chayim. It's not with our ancestors that Adonai made this covenant, but with us, the living, every one of us who is here today, right? And also what we say during the Torah service, Ba'atem hadbeikim b'Adonai Elohechem chayim kulchem hayom. And you who are attached, who are connected, who are glued to Adonai, your God, you are alive, all of you today. So that sense, it's all over Deuteronomy, being alive today, being connected to God, being before God, right? All that immediacy, right? Immediacy, and yet with an acute awareness of the past and of what's coming. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about tshuva. Let me check the time. And Asher Chaim, if you would read, getting a little time, my voice getting a little tired.
Did B'nai Israel know that Moshe was going to die that day? I don't know.
I don't think so. Not that I can see in the text. Yeah.
It just makes it more dramatic.
It does make it much more dramatic. Yeah, absolutely.
That he will be the past.
Yeah, and he has to make himself irrelevant. He has, the urgency is they've got to know the story. They've got to stand in the covenant. They've got to understand this. Otherwise, the people are not going to continue. How do you pass on your legacy in a way that renders you, right, irrelevant? Not irrelevant, irrelevant in the future, so the people can go on without you. And they have to go into the land and build a society that reflects a new stage of history, which is not dependent on Hashem, and a different relationship to power, right, and partnership. Okay, so let's read a little about tshuva, and I think that this all sort of lays the groundwork for, the elements that are necessary for tshuva. Okay, Asher Chaim, are you willing to read?
Sure, thank you. If I may contextualize, this really is the finale of the long curse that we read last week that ended so bleakly, but here's the ray of hope. V'haya, ki yavo'u alecha kol hadvarim ha'ele, haberacha v'hakalala asher natati lefanecha. Indeed, when all of these things come on you, the blessing and the curse that I've placed before you, v'hashevota el levavecha, v'chol hagoyim asher hidicha Adonai Elohecha shama, you shall return towards your heart, among all of the nations where you have been scattered, where Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has scattered you. V'shavta ad Adonai Elohecha, v'shama'ata b'kolo, kechol asher anochi mitzavecha hayom, and you will return to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, and pay attention to God's voice, according to all that I command you today. Ata uvanecha, b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, you and your offspring, with all of your heart, all of your soul.
So those words should be very familiar to you from the Shema, right? So they're all over Deuteronomy, right? With all your heart, with all your soul.
V'shav Adonai Elohecha et shivutecha v'richamecha. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will turn back your diaspora and have compassion on you. V'shav v'kibetzecha mikol ha'amim asher hefitzecha Adonai Elohecha shama. And return and gather you in from all of the nations where Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, has scattered you there. Im yiyeni dahacha b'ktzeh hashamayim, misham yikabesecha Adonai Elohecha u'misham yikachecha. If your scattered people are at the edge of the sky, from there Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will gather you and take you back. Ve'viacha Adonai Elohecha.
Asher Chaim, sorry, let's stop for a minute. This is so amazingly beautiful. I just want to point out a few things. So in my chavrita this morning, my study this morning with Rabbi Anasfeld, we talked about the mutuality of we make tshuva and then we return and then God returns, right? God returns us once we return, right? And then we're talking about well, who makes the first move here? Do we have to make the first move or does God make the first move? And, Sharon said so beautifully, God is always making the first move. God makes the first move because God's ready to receive us. Like if we understood, we'd understand that first move is always there. So that we can return and then God can mirror that action. And there's also this sense, I love this sense of like from fragmentation to unity, right? It's like, even if you're at the ends of the earth, the ends of the sky, like wherever you are, like there's this sense of return and like, being collected back. And I also like imagine that psychologically as well, like all the, the parts of ourselves that we feel fragmented, we feel disconnected, it's like that sense of collection and unification and return and that embrace. And there's that word here that I love in verse 3, so God restores us, right? Restores. I don't exactly know how to translate this.
There's a wordplay between shuv, return, and shvut from Shevi, captivity.
Yeah, so returns us from our captivity, beautiful. And then there's this compassion. God will compassion us. God will almost, since the word compassion comes from the root that means womb, it's almost a reparenting sort of process going on here.
What's the root?
Rechem, which means womb, resh chet mem. Okay. Okay, you can go on.
והביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ, אשר ירשו אבותיך, וירשתך, והיטיבך וירבך מאבותיך. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, will bring you to the land which your ancestors inherited, and you shall re-inherit it, and will make you better and more numerous than your ancestors. Umal Adonai Elohecha et levavecha v'et levav zar'echa le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha lema'an hayecha. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will perform surgery to remove any impediment from your heart and the heart of your offspring, in order to love Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, with all of your heart, with all of your soul, so that you may live.
So this word mal that Asher Chaim translated as remove impediment is also related to brit milah, right? Right. And so it's any barrier. It's like a foreskin. It's foreskin to your heart, a foreskin on your lips, foreskin over your ears, foreskin over your heart. Like removing the impediment so that we can connect to God. Okay, I don't think we have to go through the last verse there, but there's this echo of what we're reading here in Deuteronomy, in Lamentations, which will also becomes part of our liturgy here, which Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'Nashuva, right? Take us back, God, to you, and you will restore us, you will return us. Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, and renewing our days of old. So there's other sort of wonderful texts here, and I think I'll end with this, and I'm thinking about Roberta as I do. So there's so much in Thich Nhat Hanh about sometimes I think about Eastern religion or New Age kind of Torah around, and it was like just be in the present, just be in the present. But no, the present is so complicated. Yeah. Right? It's that sense of the past in the present and the future in the present, and awareness and accountability to both the past and to the future. And Thich Nhat Hanh says so much about like finding our ancestors in who we are. So, this is one quote that I found: breathing in, I see all my ancestors in me, mineral ancestors, plant ancestors, mammal ancestors, and human ancestors. My ancestors are always present, alive in every cell of my body, and I play a part in their immortality. And, I also think he has another thing that I heard in one of his YouTube videos, like, you get into a complicated sort of emotional moment, and, according to him, you say like, oh, hi, mommy, hi, daddy, like your ancestors, their voices are alive in you, both for better and for worse. right? And it's like, and how do you address them? How do you sort of locate those and define those voices and engage them in conversation so that you're not kind of dragged down by the past all the time? Okay, so Beth and Taliana, I think you both spoke today, and when yours spoke, I'm only taking new people at this point. Is anyone who hasn't spoken today would like to say something before we end, and then I'll end with a bracha for us. Okay, so it's 9:45, and yeah, we certainly carry all our ancestors' wounds, and I just seen David's comments in the chat sort of popping up, right? And that, and how do we carry that? And perhaps, how do we carry that going into Hayom, right? The Yom of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and maybe this awareness, or maybe carrying that load with one another can make it a little lighter or a little easier to navigate, standing here with one another, like with all of you, like on this day, like the power of time to perhaps cleanse us of our past as we sort of try to figure out how to live with it, right? Like what's the force of redemption? What's the force of redemption here? I feel like there's so much more to say, but I am not sure what it is. So I will bless all of this with a sense that we can return home to ourselves, to one another, that the community that we create with one another is a home for us, where we can be, fully ourselves. And may we all feel the redemptive power of Rosh Hashanah. And